is Fielder. He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome once again to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. This is Steve Fielder, your host, coming at you one more time by the miracle of Al Gore's internet. And I have a special guest with us here today that I just can't wait to introduce you to. But before I do that, I want to send a shout out to all the folks that reached out to me and to my family over the last couple of weeks. As if you follow me on social media, you know that unfortunately my brother and I had to say goodbye to our mother. Mom was 100 years and 11 days old. I think she just finally said, "I'm done. This is enough. I'm going to go home." And she went peacefully in her sleep. And such a legacy, such a life that she lived before us. And of course, we miss her very, very much. But I just wanted to say to everyone out there who reached out in any way to us through posts on social media, through text or in emails, phone calls, cards that we received, beautiful flowers at her service, and coming out to the visitation. It all meant so very, very much to us. And on behalf of my brother Randy, my son Christopher, my brother's daughters Madison and Miranda, and our entire family, we just want to say thank you. It really meant a lot to us. Today, as we are podcasting, it's the first day of the 2022 Tournament of Champions Finals out in Greencastle, Indiana. So we'll send a belated, because when this this comes out, the winner will have been declared. But we'll send a belated good luck to all those 96 final contestants that are out there going for that $50,000 first prize. And I'm sure we'll have some announcements as we go along in future episodes. All right, I want to cut right to the chase here and introduce to you somebody that has become one of my favorite people down through the years. I've known our guest for quite a long time. She and I worked together as writers for American Cooner magazine, and I think that's probably where I first met our guest, and I'm going to let her say hello to you right now. So happy to have Amy Kovac Thomas with us today. How are you, Amy?
I'm doing well, Steve, and actually we met through PKC before American Cooner.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I was showing my cur dog, Swamp Rat, or maybe it may have been even before he was born, and you were set up, and I'd come from National Kennel Club with the cur dogs, and I walk into the tennis center at down in Kentucky, and it was just set up so beautifully, and you were sitting up there and doing all the announcements, and that was my first PKC event, and it was my first encounter with you.
Wow. Well, that's interesting to know. It seems like I've known you forever because I've been reading your stuff, and we've had the occasion to work together in the American Cooner Full Cry booth out at the events like especially Grand American and perhaps Autumn Oaks and different ones. But, I want our listeners to know who you are, Amy. So I want you to give me just a little background about where you were born, maybe something about your years growing up. I know that your family has been involved very heavily with tree dogs, especially cur dogs, through the years. And then you have an interesting profession and all that. So just give us the backstory a little bit on Amy.
Okay. So I grew up in House Springs, Missouri, and ironically, I still work there for the school district at the bottom of the hill where I went to high school. It's now a middle school, and I spent my entire life there until 11 years ago when my husband and I got remarried, and we bought a small farm out here in DeSoto. So my whole life was really in House Springs.
I see. So now how far is that from St. Louis?
It's probably about 40 minutes.
Just 40 minutes west, I guess, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, fine. And are you near Montgomery City, where John Wick's factory and all
No,
that was? Or is that farther out?
no, I'm closer like to St. Louis. Really like where Six Flags is in Missouri. We're in that area. We're
Oh,
in the
okay.
hills in Missouri here.
I got you. So you're a hillbilly then.
I'm a hillbilly, and I married a hillbilly twice. So
They say things are better second time around,
it's like chili. It's got more seasoning the second time around.
Well, that's kind of like Ella and me. We were sweethearts in high school and dated for a couple years, and I never forgot her down through all the years, but it was probably close to 40 years that we didn't see each other. I think we knew that the other existed maybe somewhere, but and then through that miracle of internet that I talked about earlier, we got connected, and of course it's been great. But hey, listen, tell me a little bit about your growing up years, with the dogs and all. Is that all? Have the dogs always been a part of your life?
Let me tell you an interesting story, and it kind of goes back to Greencastle, Indiana. Now, my parents are no longer married, but in the early years, when they were getting married, my mother's wedding gift to my father was a black and tan coonhound that came from a breeder in Greencastle, Indiana. And they drove to Greencastle, Indiana, and they picked a dog up that my dad would name Drummer. And they picked him out of the litter because he had broken his tail and he had a stovepipe tail, so he stuck out. And like my whole life, there's always been a coon dog. There's pictures of me, probably my second Christmas, sitting on Drummer underneath the Christmas tree. I took my first steps in the basement of an old German farmer that lived up by us that my dad coon hunted with his son. So my mom wasn't thrilled about that. I used to ride between my dad and his friend whose father that was that I just referenced to, and they would climb trees. They had contests on live coons because they were so thin here at that time that they would, the different clubs would collect live coons and release them to areas where they felt like they could thrive better. So yeah, my whole life, Steve, I just got my first non-tree dog 5 years ago. I bought a yellow lab. Still a sporting dog, but it's the first non-tree dog I have ever owned.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, and that's pretty much my story too, And the listeners have heard my story many times on here, but the only dogs that we knew at my house were hounds and tree dogs and all. And of course, now recently, at the request of my wife, we've obtained a little, he was supposed to be a miniature dachshund. We got him when he was 8 weeks old, and I drove all the way up to Richmond. Well, I didn't drive. No. I flew into Dayton, Ohio, and drove over to Richmond, Indiana, where Autumn Oaks is held, and a breeder there had these dogs that we found out about, and then I drove that puppy all the way back to Florida, about 19 and a half hours worth. And he kind of rules the roost around here. He's 6 months old now. His name is Louie, and he's a black and tan. I mean, he looks like a black and tan hound. Actually, the tan part is real rich red, like a red bone. But he's a real dude, and we enjoy him a lot. But my dogs are kind of farmed out around. I've got co-ownership in a plot pup and also in a Trackman pup that I got from Randy Smith, a Seaman pup. And then I've got a 3-year-old Walker dog that I also got from Randy. That's with a friend up in Virginia. So still got some coon dogs, but living in this retirement community here in Florida, it doesn't work out all that well. It's okay with us, but the dogs don't like it as well. So, but anyway, all right. Well, tell me a little bit about what you do. What's your professional experience there, Amy?
Okay, so I am I think my 28th year in education. I spent the the first 19 working with behavior children. And then they did away with my position, and they put me in the position I am in now, and I'm a school psychological examiner. So I do all the special education testing, all the report writing, see if if children meet criteria. I deal with parents, teachers. And then when Billy and I got remarried, I went back. I had started I have a master's in education. I was halfway through my master's in counseling. And when we got divorced, needless to say, that went to the wayside. But when we got remarried, it was one of those things that just was still unfinished for me. And so he supported me, and I'm also a licensed professional therapist in addition to working for the school. So no, I'm not a writer for my full-time job. I do this for fun.
Well, we're going to talk about your writing for sure, because that's most of our listeners know you as a feature writer for American Cooner and Full Crime magazines. But okay, let's go back and talk about the cur dog in your life. Okay, your dad, Ray Kovac, right? Did he start out with cur dogs? I know that he kind of became, well, you said he had a black and tan that he got in where? Greencastle, you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that having from the Tournament of Champions tonight?
Was that from the Cosner bloodline? Those old-fashioned black and tans?
He had the long ears.
Yeah.
He was as old-fashioned as you get.
Yeah. Well, there were 2 or 3 kennels that were well known for those dogs back in the 40s and all. One of them was in Greencastle. One of them was up in Niles, Michigan. And there was another over in Ohio, and the name of the town right now is escaping me. But I did quite a bit of research on those dogs back in the days at UKC when we were doing special breed issues on the separate breeds of dogs. But okay, so where did the cur dog come in to your family?
A fluke.
Yeah.
The Motor family is the farming family that I referred to earlier. So LT was the father, and he had a big farm, and his son was Billy Motor, and he and my dad were both Vietnam vets, and they had seen some things in their life that young men probably shouldn't see. And they kind of bonded over coon hunting. When my dad was the first one to actually move out of the city to the country. And so they got to know each other, and my dad had hounds all the way through. But Billy's dad had gone to an auction, and he bought a Stevens cur from the auction, and he took it back to the farm, and they used it to run hogs, run cattle. The dog was so smart. He played with the kids. He played soccer with the kids. He squirrel hunted. He coon hunted. His name was Homer, and he was by far probably the smartest dog, and beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. And Homer, Billy had walkers off of Deep River Mike. He had a dog that was called Big River Dan, who was the Missouri state champion, and he had a female off of him. And Homer was 9 months old, and Sally, Dan's daughter, came in heat, and nobody really worried about Homer because he was a pup. And they should have.
There was another famous Homer story about that, about the dog that was the sire of Bone Collector, the Homer dog. He was the product of a puppy getting too familiar with his mother. And that's how he came about, and that's ultimately how the Great Bone Collector came along. But maybe just something in that name. I don't know.
I'm thinking.
Okay, go ahead.
So 2 puppies were born. Obviously, Homer's sperm count was still young. He was young. And there was a black one, a male, and they named him Jesse. And there was a black and white one, and they named it Daisy. And, of course, Dukes of Hazzard was the main show on TV at that time. So hence the names.
Just good old boys.
Yeah. Well, my dad had blue tick English that we had named Rose, and she had heartworms, and he had gotten her treated, and she was a really good dog. But he was hunting off what's called Howell's Island here in our area, and it's famous for people getting lost and having it helicoptered out. It's surrounded by the the rivers. So Rose was in the river, and we never saw her again. So my dad doesn't know if like the heartworms and the pressure on her heart, if she'd have stayed probably not swimming in that river, she would have been fine. So he was without a dog. And Billy had offered him the female pup. They were keeping the male, and he had offered him the female pup prior. And those puppies were born on Easter, which is kind of funny in itself. And my dad had said, "No, it's okay. I've got a dog. I don't need another one." Well, when Rose disappeared, my dad went and he took Daisy, and every dog in my kennel goes back to Daisy.
I see.
So we were not cur people until then.
Okay. So you were pretty much instrumental in breeding the curs and all that, and perpetuating or propelling that idea of cur dogs right along with your dad from the very start then. Is that right?
I was 9 years old. And like I said, I'm going to be 51 next Thursday. And
a woman that actually tells her age. What? What is
Billy's
this?
Sweet.
It's a first. You heard it right here, folks. Right here.
I won't tell you my weight, though.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. You're a very young 51. I'll say that for sure. Well, okay. So the cur dogs then. At what point did you or your dad decide that you wanted to crossbreed the curs with hounds?
Well, Daisy was actually half hound, half cur. Our first dog was half hound, half cur. Okay.
So that's the foundation then. Yeah.
She couldn't be registered until National Kennel Club started allowing for treeing curs. So we would go to grade hunts. Daisy was a phenomenal dog. When you asked me about dogs that were historic, Daisy would crack peanuts with her mouth. Daisy would open doors with, handles with her mouth. Daisy, we have so many stories. My dad bought a harness, and she would pull my brother Alex on the sled when it snowed. There was nothing the dog couldn't do. And we'd always be like, "That's amazing. That is so amazing." And hence, amazing has been in the name ever since we were able to register. She was Amazing Daisy. So we took her to Millstadt for plot days, probably someplace you're familiar with.
I've been there and for sure.
Daisy could swim. And this is when, they had the swim races. Oh, gosh, what's the place that was up? It always happened the same time as like Autumn Oaks.
The Kenton National.
Kenton Nationals, like... And swim dogs were a hot item. Well, Daisy beat every dog there in the swim races. And my dad was offered a lot of money for her that day. And then they had the bear treeing contest back when you could have a bear, and it just had a collar and a chain. And, the plots were baying it, but they needed it to go up a tree. Well, the cur dog in her just made contact, and she grabbed it, and it climbed up the tree. And as a little kid, my brother and I, we were like, "Oh my gosh, our dog," I mean, we went there and we cleaned up with what we participated in with a grade dog. And we had, like I said, nothing against the hounds. We had some really good coonhounds, but Daisy just made life easy. My dad had started his own business. He couldn't hunt the way he used to. We could squirrel hunt instead of being out all night. It made life. It changed our lives. Just that one dog.
Okay, well, tell me more about her. What did she look like?
She looked like a Holstein cow. She was black and white with a little brindle on her face.
I see.
Long flag tail. It's back when the walkers had the flag. Walkers were known for having the flag tails, and had a big old flag tail and would knock stuff off the coffee table with it. All my dogs now are bobtailed, and we bred in the natural bob gene, and with these labs, I'm not used to having tails anymore, so it's been a while.
Yeah. Did she open on track?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
She was not a lot though. Just a little. We lost Daisy several times, and we always got her back. There were a lot of stories about Daisy, amazing Daisy.
Well, as a coonhound, we hear this a lot today, the lack of the hounds being accurate. Was she fairly accurate when she treed? I mean, did you usually see something in the tree?
I think that's part of the cur. There were no empty trees with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She, like I said, she was by far the best dog. She was accurate. She was smart. But we couldn't register. We couldn't register her until she was, I think, 11 years old, 9, 10, 11 years old. Billy and I got together not long after we were actually able to register her and start participating in events. And she was too old at that point to do things.
Now, was that NKC registration, or were you talking about UKC registration?
Nope, that was National Kennel Club.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
My brother was instrumental in UKC.
Yeah, I know that. In fact, he actually worked for UKC for a period of time, didn't he, with their cur dog program and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. Well, is the NKC still active? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. Primarily with the cur dogs?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, all right. So I guess Daisy's probably going to be at the top of the list of your favorite dogs then, right?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, did she produce? Did she reproduce herself?
She did. She had a daughter named Star, and Star is who we based everything off of. The first time we crossed Star, we crossed her onto Fred Sauer's sport dog. And then we crossed her the second time to Gary Porter's chief dog. He was the son of Jesse James and Penny. It was a very well-known cross in the original Mountain Curs. And that's actually where the bobtail came from, the bobtail gene that we still have in there. And so we took Star and we had those puppies off of her, and then we would cross half brother to half sister. And it was those puppies off that half brother, half sister that we started crossing onto the hounds. That's when we went back to the hound because we were getting pretty tight with the cur.
When I was at UKC, I noticed that UKC had a habit of stamping papers as inbred, but it wasn't consistent in the amount of inbreeding that they were indicating. They would take a dog, for instance, that was a half-brother sister and call it inbred, but wouldn't take an uncle-niece cross and call it inbred, or a grandfather-granddaughter cross and call it inbred, which is actually the same percentage of inbreeding. So I propose that we say, okay, if it is a full brother-sister cross, a mother to her son or a father to his daughter, then okay, stamp it inbred. But anything beyond that, you're not consistent with the policy, so therefore don't indicate those half-brother, sister, or those uncle-niece crosses. And I believe that policy is still in effect today. But it's just interesting that you mentioned that, and I have always, my father and I, practiced family breeding of the dogs. Why do you like to do that, Amy?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. There's two sides to it. One, you don't lose what has made your dog so special by diluting it over and over again. So you can walk a fine line of having double the good, but you can also walk the fine line of having double the bad, and so I think that's something that we as breeders, we always try to double the good, and we want to pretend that we don't get double the bad, but there are times that sometimes that works for you and sometimes it doesn't. And some crosses work better together genetically and some crosses don't. So I think it's, for me though, we've always looked at it as we didn't want to lose Daisy. We want a dog that comes out that we go, you know what, that reminds us of so-and-so. That's something that so-and-so did. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you can see it when you do practice a breeding program like that. You can see it in little subtle ways. We had a dog named Rip. When he sat down, he always lifted one front foot up and just kind of held it there, And his puppies would do that. Now, they pass on something like that, just, But those little visible traits like that sometimes are pretty good indicators that there's also performance traits in there that are the same as those other dogs. Have you found that to be true?
I have. I truly do see that. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like with your children. You'll see
Mm-hmm.
certain traits, and then you see their genetic talents, and you're like, okay, this is where this is coming from.
Yeah.
We
Well,
actually,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but
No, go ahead.
one of the things that we did that we were kind of forerunners with when it came to the cur dogs, and you're seeing it more and more now, is we actually started DNA testing the dogs and looking to see the dogs that had the most fixed amount of genes. A typical dog has about 20 to 30% of fixed genes. A dog that starts hitting over 50%, now those fixed genes could be colored. Don't get me wrong, genetics are hard for us to, pinpoint exactly what does what, but a dog with a higher percentage of fixed genes is going to reproduce itself more than a dog that's more diluted. So that's why sometimes you get when you have a dog with all recessive genes and you hit into a dog that's extremely dominant, that's why there's some of those dogs that with the right bitch or the right stud, they're going to reproduce what you want from that dog that is so dominating. So that
Mm-hmm.
was something that we actually did that was kind of above and beyond what normal cur people do. We're pretty into genetics here on this
Yeah,
end. My
I got
dad,
you.
my brother, myself. It to us it all goes back to the gene pool.
Well, just hearing you talk about it, I can tell that, it's coming from a knowledge base, not just, so many times we deal in old wives' tales, no offense to the old wives, but
That's me, Steve.
no,
That's me.
no. But, we do. We tend to lean on these old saws, as they say, of opinions and so forth. But yeah, I tried to be a student. I was a seat of the pants geneticist, I guess, in my years of breeding dogs. But I tried to read. I read on Stott, the New Art of Breeding Better Dogs, and I read about Lloyd Brackett, who they called him Mr. German Shepherd, and the success that he had with family breeding dogs, wherein he would take a stud and select the very best daughters of that stud and then breed them back to their sire, and he produced just whole litters of champions. Of course, he was producing dogs for the conformation ring, but at the same time, those things, if it'll work there, it'll work in performance dogs too, I believe. But anyway, really interesting stuff. When did you start getting interested in the competitions and doing that sort of thing? The night hunts or squirrel hunts? Now, let me ask this first. Do you hunt your dogs both ways, coon and squirrel?
We have in
Mhm.
the past. Clay's Fred dog was probably one of the few, and my little dog that she's pretty old now, but Rose PKC hunted her. And so we've used them both ways. I haven't competition hunted in a while, between kids playing varsity sports and when my job changed. I'm just going to be honest with the new job role I'm in is extremely demanding. So I keep them all down there. I'm keeping my peace, and I retire in 4 years. I just told Billy, I said July 1st of 2026, I'm retired no matter what. And with that being said, the key is I don't want to lose what I have, even if right now I'm not utilizing it to its full capacity.
But you've proven that stock already. You know that it's worthy to use, I'm sure. Okay. All right. Let's. So Daisy was your all-time favorite. Do you have other standouts that you remember down through the years, cur dogs that or cur crosses or whatever that you particularly remember or liked?
Well, I'm gonna back you up to my Walker Hound, Gypsy. I was 12 years old and I made her a champion over in Walnut Grove, Illinois. My dad and my uncle were there, and she was 10 months old. She was actually the dog that inspired me to do things for the youth. I sent in her picture. I was so proud of myself. There are some really tacky pictures of me with my I Hunt Walkers mesh 1980s version hat and some pants and shirts. My mom probably should have said that. That's not very flattering. Um, and I sent it in to the Treeing Walker Breeders Association. I may have sent it into another Walker Association. A couple pictures talking about my dog making bench champion at 10 months old. And they ran my picture in American Cooner and in full cry. And my world changed, Steve. I remember it was a snowy day. We ran out, we got the magazine, and I remember laying on the floor and going through it, and my picture was in there. And I was like 11, 40 years ago. And to this day, I can tell you exactly how I felt. I felt noticed. Someone cared enough to run my picture. And it changed my life forever because here I am, 51 years old, writing for the magazines, still involved with kids. So I did have one very special walker who changed my world. And then when it came to the cur dogs, my husband, and he had a dog named Sage, and he was off of Star and Sour Sport. We had Sage, Ruby, and Grace. My dad hunted Ruby, my brother hunted Grace, my husband hunted Sage. And I don't remember who I was hunting. I had some mountain cur females. I had Jane and I had Annie, and they to breed Sage too. But Sage ended up being the NKC Cur and Feist World Night Champion. Billy handled him. He was our everything. He got sick. To come to find out, somehow he had gotten something lodged between the lining of his lungs, and it looked like he had pneumonia, and he didn't. And we drove him to the university and to have his chest lining cleaned out, but he died before they could perform the surgery. So that was Bill's favorite dog, and we'd shoot him and he'd fall over dead, and he was brindle and white and just as beautiful as can be. And we had a lot of good dogs in between, but then my swamp rat dog came. And he looked a lot like Sage, except he had one white eye. And I'm going to tell you, the gypsy dog had one white eye. I've always been partial to a white-eyed dog. I don't know what it is. And my dad had all the puppies sold. He went and he took a dog that we had named Cedar, who was off of Copper and Ruby, a half-brother, half-sister cross, and he bred to Rat Attack. He went down to Buzz Lynch's, who, probably thought he was crazy, but they had made another cross off of Rat Attack with a different cur dog that had turned out very well. So my dad made that cross, and all the puppies were supposed to be sold except we had 4 males. And people who wanted females didn't transfer over. So my dad had this male puppy that was born on my birthday. So my dad spent my birthday that year watching this litter of puppies be born, and we did nothing to acknowledge my birthday. And I was a little miffed. I'll just be honest with you. I was like, really? Dogs are more important than me. But he went to New York with my mom to visit a friend that they had met in the dog world. And this dog was the only one left. Swamp Rat. I would have never named him that, just so you know. My dad named him. And my dad said, can you dog sit him? If I bring him over, will you dog sit him? He's the only puppy left and nobody wants him, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I've got this trip. So I took Rat that day, and Rat never left my house. And Rat got me through my divorce. I'm not real good at dating. Maybe when you're still have unfinished business with your ex, I've met a lot of wonderful people, but just not for me. So I spent a lot of time with my children and that dog in the woods. Pretty much I dated Rat for many years, and he was the one that I took to the PKC. That's when PKC had squirrel events, and he was the dog that I pushed the most. And not
dogs
too many
have
like
been
him.
Yeah, dogs have been responsible, I guess, for a lot of breakups, but I've never really considered the fact that dogs are good for those times, when you need to get through. But the first thing usually people do is when there is a breakup or whatever, they sell everything. I'm getting out. I'm selling the box, the light, the dogs, the boots, everything. But no, that's great. That's great, and that was a significant dog in your breeding efforts, and all, wasn't he? I mean,
Yes.
Tell us a little more about him. What kind of dog was he? How did he operate, and what did you like about him?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The one flaw I didn't like about him is he was a little tree happy. No offense. I'm gonna say it's the Rat Attack in him, but
Well,
Buzz and them are probably going to kill me for that comment. No.
Well, they're used to it, I'm sure.
That was actually trainer error. That was me being excited when he got treed and praising him too quickly when he was young instead of making him produce the meat for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I consider that more my error as a trainer than I do actually the dogs. But he was a squirrel dog. He was a coon dog. Not open. I mean, if he opened, it was a red hot track. So when we compete with the curs, a lot of times I do have some that are open, but they're far and few between. So we do a lot of strike and tree. If you hear that dog, you're pretty well, going to be striking and treeing. And if they open on a track, that you can go ahead and strike them anyway because it's hot and they're going to end up with it. So we had him. At the same time, my dad had taken the same, I don't know if he took I think he actually took a different female and he bred to X Junior. So we had my brother's X Factor dog. So we had Rat Attack and we had X Junior in our lines at that point for when we crossed out.
All right.
And we did some other ones like Gap and, some different, well-known dogs along the way. But, those were some of our better crosses.
Right.
But Rat he was my friend. He rode with me in the front seat. My parents, I was traveling all over with this dog and they'd be like, worried about me. And I'm like, he'd sleep on the seat next to me if I pulled off at a rest area. Nobody was going to mess with me with Rat in the vehicle.
Sure. It's great to have a dog like that. That's kind of what I've wanted to do for a while. And I had that with the Hoss dog that I had, the Plot. And he rode over 200,000 miles with me in the truck. And it's just great to have a companion. And the guys that say that you can't have that kind of dog and have a good hunting dog or a good coonhound, I think they're missing the boat for sure.
I agree.
Well, we touched a little bit on the writing, and we know that you do write for American Cooner magazine. You write for Full Cry. How did this writing aspect of your life begin for you?
So nothing in my life has ever just been something that I usually pursue. Every job I've had comes to me. I've interviewed twice in my entire life. Once for a job I didn't get right out of college in 1994, and once more for a counseling center where I had to do my internship. So I had to sit down with the lady. Every other job has come to me through my actions, through my work ethic, what people have seen, things like that. So, and going with opportunities. So it was Junction, Illinois. PKC was having a bench show, and I took Rat, my dad and I. So I'm going to back us up. So when Billy and I got divorced, I was very well known with the Cur and Feist Association and the Cur dogs, and to have a divorce was pretty devastating. So PKC was a place where no one knew me. So you didn't even know you met me that day. No one knew me, and I was happy. It was a fresh start for me to be able to enjoy the dogs without all of the connection of my failed marriage. So my dad and I drove over to Junction, Illinois, and Terry Walker happened to be there. And he had bought Full Cry at that point from Seth Galt. And he said, "Oh, you're Amy Kovac Thomas. You write for Full Cry." He said, "Well, call me on Monday. Call me on Monday. Call me at the office." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And my dad's like, "What's up with that?" I'm like, "I don't know." So I showed my dog and, we went on our way, and my dad and I went home. And on Monday, I called Terry Walker at the office and I left him a message. "Amy Thomas told me to call you. Here's my number. Call me back." Didn't hear from him. And I want to say that was probably March. Called him one more time later that week, just following up again. Wasn't sure what you wanted. He probably won't even remember this. That's the terrible thing about it.
He's probably in Mexico or somewhere.
So I leave it be. It makes no difference in my life whatsoever what Terry Walker wanted to ask me or whatever. So fast forward to July at the Breeder Showcase, and it may have been the first time I met you. I'm not quite sure. So I go to the Breeder Showcase, and Terry Walker comes up to me and he says, "Amy, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Terry, I called you twice and you didn't call me back. I don't really care what you have to say." And he said, no, really, I'd like you to start doing some articles. I've been reading your article in full cry, and I would like you to start doing some articles for American Cooner.
Okay, let's back up just a little bit now. You started writing breed columns for the cur dog people in full cry. Then those were your first writings in Treehound magazines, correct?
Yes, and I still do it every month.
And that is, tell our listeners what that column is that you write.
It's the National Treeing Cur Association column. It's based upon dogs that were like mine that may not be full mountain cur. And don't get me going, because I don't believe there's a full cur in the world, because, everybody wants to act like they came over on the Plymouth. And, I'm thinking about all the hills of Tennessee, and Homer knocked up, this well-known female when he was 9 months old. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I appreciate everybody keeping pedigrees going and talents going and bloodlines going. That I do respect. And I definitely, honor that people have worked hard to continue. But, so yeah, I started writing the Treeing Cur column when I was 20. So every month in full cry, I've got an article in there. To this day, got to write it this weekend.
I read them. I still take the magazines and I still read them. More and more people, I guess, are deserting us, Amy. They're going to the internet for their news, but a lot of people still like to hold it in their hand, and I'm one of those guys. But anyway, didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to get that established that you were already writing prior to Terry. Okay, so you meet Terry at the Breeder Showcase, and you agree to do feature articles for him, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then what does he normally give you a decent notice about a certain dog, or do you just assume that if a dog won a major hunt that you're going to do an article about him?
In the beginning, he just had me going to events and writing my event coverage. And the longer I was there, he wouldn't let me write the winter articles yet, because he said I needed to get to know the people. I needed to get to know the dogs. I needed to establish myself first before he would let me write an article on a big winner. And I think my first article on a big winner was Grand American, one of the Grand American winners. So really, I was just going and selling magazine subscriptions for him and talking to people and taking pictures and writing features on the hunts. But somehow it metamorphosed to, I really wanted to write those articles. Vicki Lamb was doing most of them at that time. And that was her spot, and she had carved her way into, that role. And so it didn't happen for quite a while, but when it did, then the floodgates opened. And pretty much, I don't even have my name on all the articles I write now, but unless it's got your name on it or somebody else's, if you don't see a name, it's probably me who wrote it. So I used to want my name on everything. Now I just don't care. I'm like, okay, yeah, if you can't tell it's my writing style by now, you probably don't know me.
Well, that's kind of, we have some parallels in our experience. When I was at UKC, I had never done any writing. I had sent a couple articles when I was in the military over in Japan, just really missing coon hunting and the dogs and all. And I sent a couple articles to Mrs. Walker, who was then the owner and editor of Full Cry, Estelle Walker there from Sedalia, Missouri. That's before the Seth Galt days or the Terry Walker days. And anyway, but those were my only attempts, and they were pretty lame. I still have those articles. But when I went to UKC, they told me that, well, there's a column that we do in Bloodlines every month called Coon Talk. And my predecessor, Andy Johnson, had been doing that. So I started writing that. It was about a page of copy that they expected of me every month. And we didn't have computers back then, word processors or whatever. We had old IBM Selectric typewriters with correction tape, and I went through reams of that. But I did. There were a few little things along the way that helped me. Number one, I wanted to be with the girls, so I took a typing class in high school. I had a free period, the last period of the day for an elective, and I took typing. And I think I was the only guy in the whole class. But anyway, so I learned the fundamentals there, and then Uncle Sam sent me through a typing course too when I went in the Air Force. So I knew basically how to type. I knew how to put my fingers on the home row, instead of being just a pecker, just a hut and pecker, as we say. Okay, moving on. Anyway, but my experience, became kind of like yours, I guess, when you said the floodgates opened, because we decided to start trying to build Coonhound Bloodlines into a viable magazine where, we were getting killed by Cooner and Full Cry. At that time, each one of those had about 30,000 subscribers, and we had 3,000. So that's when the Coonhound Bloodlines came along, and we're trying to build it into a magazine. So I found myself writing these breed articles for special issues. And man, I know one issue there, I remember I had 20,000 words in that one issue. I'm like, man, this is a lot of writing. So, but I think about you, and all the stuff that you've written down through the years, and especially like with Super Stakes, and you got 3 divisions now, and you got spring, you got fall, you got the youth program, you got all these things that you're writing about, and I know it takes a tremendous amount of time. How do you manage all that?
I don't know. I've always been really good at time management. Like when you said that, right now I am working on the Super Stakes, and there's 4 divisions because there's the freshmen
Oh, that's
now.
right.
And
Yeah, the baby stakes.
so,
Mm-hmm.
Prohound has me write 4 articles, and then Terry usually doesn't cover the freshmen, but he does have me do the sophomore, junior, and senior divisions. And I kind of know when those things are coming up that I'm not going to have much of a life.
Mm-hmm.
I will go to work. I will come home. Those are the times I try to run my dogs. We have a small farm, and it's all fenced in. So I try to get my dogs out a minimum of 5 times a week. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's my therapy. It's how I
Mm-hmm.
decompress, is being with the dogs. But on those weeks and those times where I'm trying to interview, and I'll be honest with you, I've never loved seeing owner handler as a winner as much as I do at the Super Stakes, because if there's 4 people and I've got to talk to 4 people and I've got to try to make that into one story, and I'm trying to correspond working full time, like I'm working, I
Oh,
leave
yeah.
work every day at 6 a.m. and I don't get home till, if it's a good day, 3:30. So I'm trying to choreograph having these interviews. I'm typing. I've only had 1 semester in high school of typing also, Mr. Fielder. My mom did pay for piano lessons for many years, and I'm a lousy piano player. However, I say she made me a wonderful typist because of my fingers. So I'm typing as they're talking. I'm sure there's some technological way I could make this easier for myself, but I'm kind of old fashioned in a lot of ways, like tracking systems. I won't let my kids, when they were learning to handle, I wouldn't let them pull it out unless they need to find their dog. You need to know how to handle your dog. I'm just very, very traditional. So
Yep.
I'm typing as they're talking. I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
choreograph. So I'm lucky. The thing about Billy is, and when you're a man and you're a coon hunter, they always thank their wives in these articles. I appreciate my wife, being so supportive. And I have to appreciate Billy for being so supportive. Because when I was in my 30s, I'd get up and I'd stay up late, and I'd get up early and I'd write these articles. I worked a lot more hours. I get tired. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm tired now. When I get home, I'm tired. So, he will take care of things for me here. He will clean my kennels. I don't have a maid. No one does my housework or my laundry. No one cleans my kennels or runs my dogs. He will fill in for me, and he will do those things for me. And so that is what makes it easy. But I'll be honest with you, Steve, there's times that I have been typing at basketball games. There's times I've gone out of a basketball tournament to interview somebody while sitting in my car typing. I've gone out on my lunch break and typed in my car doing an interview. If you want to accomplish something in life, you can do it. But sometimes you have to plan ahead. you have to make sacrifices, and you have to utilize every second that you have to do it. So I'm pretty quick. So
I
that
know
helps.
that you are, because you look at the fruit of your labors, and I know maybe a lot of our listeners may not know this, but I do, because I've been there and I know the amount of work that goes into it. Yeah, I was laughing as you were saying that, about sitting in your car. When I went to work for the AKC, I was on the corporate management committee. That meant I had to be there front and center for the board meetings at AKC. That's where the upper ups, come together once a month and go through the board book and vote up or down changes and all these kind of things. And the first board meeting I attended by teleconference, I was sitting in a rocking chair on Johnny Brinkley's front porch in Tallahassee, Florida. We'd been up half the night coon hunting, David McKee and Johnny and I and Lee Currens, and I'm sitting out there with cobwebs in my brain, trying to appear as if I know, and I hadn't been with AKC very long at that point. So we find opportunities where we can, I guess. But yeah, I understand fully, and like you, I don't record interviews. When I interview or pick up a story or whatever, I tell the guys going in, I said, I'm typing as you're talking, just keep going. If I need you to stop and give me a break there, I'll tell you. And what I do is I just type all this ton of notes. And then as I start the article, I'll go back to the top of the page and I'll start typing the article, the finished draft. And then if I extract, I'll go down through my notes and find something I want to use. Well, I highlight it. And then I copy it and I move. Do you do those things? And then I'll move it into the article, work it up, massage it a little and all. And then if it's highlighted, I know I've already used that part, so don't use it again. So my methods are not orthodox at all, but go ahead.
So when I first started writing, I was like you, I used a typewriter, and sometimes my pages were crunchy because if my tape wasn't working right, I would use whiteout. And then when we got to use computers, I will generally, I send them a format of questions and I put the information under it. But then I'll go through and I do the story, and I work that information in there. But when you were saying that, I was like, yes, that's what I do. Well, to a T. So that's funny. But I'm going to ask you this, Steve. I'm not used to being asked the questions. I'm used to asking questions.
Okay.
For me, when I'm writing a story, and I'm just kind of curious, I like to, with fellow writers, to kind of see how things work for them. To me, it's an honor to tell a story, to win a Super Stakes, to win Autumn Oaks, to win the Grand American, to win Southeastern or Treeing Walker Breeders Association Walker Days, to win these big events. I know the time and energy that people put in, whether it's the breeding program of the dog, it's the trainers, it's the owners. Owners, a lot of people will be like, oh, they're rich. They got somebody paying their way. But those people could put their money into horse racing. They could put their money into stock cars. They're choosing to help us continue our sport. And when somebody's out there every day and they're working hard to make a dog and a dog wins big, I get a rush on telling their story. It to me is my honor to do it for them, just like it was an honor for me to see my little tiny article when I was, a young girl. And I send them the copy to proofread before it goes, because if there's anything they've said or they want to change or anything I've messed up, to me, and then there's still mistakes that will fall through. Like I'll miss something, that they said, I'll miss an email or something and it's been submitted. But to me, to be able to tell someone's story of all their hard work and the dogs, it's an honor for me. It's not a job, it's an honor.
Absolutely it is. And, I said a long time ago, and I probably wasn't the one that coined this phrase, but I've always said that recognition is the name of the game. People don't really get into this sport for the money. and all, I learned when I was at PKC, I would pull into an event. At that time, I was editor of Prohound magazine, and the guys would be jerking the door handles off my truck. You got the latest Prohound? You got the latest Prohound? This is before the days of the internet really getting huge and so much information online. And they were simply wanting to get that magazine and go through those, Sire of the Year, Pup of the Month, whatever it was, and see their name in print. Or if it's in the back, in that little print in the back where there was a hunt at Forks of the Creek Coon Club, and they were a split winner there, and there's my name, and you'd see them elbowing their buddy. Look right here. See right there? That's me. And we do. I don't care who we are. It's the recognition that we get from our peers that is important. And to me, I think the magazines will forever be important to people that get out there. I think PKC may have learned a little lesson about that here just recently when they decided, to do away with Prohound. And I can't imagine how many phone calls Roger Dale got during that time and those guys, but it was very clear to them, and to their credit, they reversed that decision and said, no, our members want to still have the magazine. And of course, I'm an old guy now, and I cut my teeth on, or virtually actually learned to read on coonhound magazines. Full Cry used to come rolled up in a brown paper tube. And not actually a tube. The brown paper was just kind of wound in it. You had to be real careful and slit it with a razor blade or put a knife under there so you didn't cut the magazine cover when you took it apart. And then you had to roll it the opposite way to get it to lay flat. But I look forward to those magazines coming, like Christmas, every month. So anyway, I think you and I will both agree that not only is it an honor to write about these people that have done these things with their dogs, but it's also an honor to be able to be the one that gets to do the writing about them, and do you agree with any of that?
Oh, 100%. That's why I asked you if you had that same feeling, because it's just, I think people wonder why do you do it? Like, in all honesty, like, it's not like I'm making bank or it's paying my bills or, it really is just the honor of telling a story. And my writing background was just, I was voted best writer in high school, and I did the
Awesome.
newspaper and the literary magazine and had one semester of typing. That's all I
Mm-hmm.
had. But it's my niche, and I know it is. And it helps me on my job now. I work with a team of some really wonderful women, and they say, how do you get, like, our reports could be, 35 to 50 pages long. And they're like, Amy, how do you do this? And how do you finish this report? And I said, I'm kind of just, you'd have to know what I do on the side. I can type fast and I can finish a story.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and I think, of course, I jokingly tell people, I'm a fielder. You ask us what time it is, and we tell you how to build a watch, and I've always been that way, I guess. And as I get older, I've learned that, everything reminds me of something else. Everything reminds me of a story, a place I've been, something someone told me, a hunt I was on, whatever. So the stories for a guy my age are just endless, and I like to tell them. My mother used to fuss at my dad for telling stories that she'd heard several times, and he'd say, well, I know, but I want to hear it again myself. And that was kind of our way in our family. We told stories. My dad was a great storyteller. He would tell you which side of the mountain the bear was treed on, which side of the tree the moss was on, which way the wind was blowing, what the temperature was, and everything about the story. He remembered the most minute details. And but storytelling is just something that comes natural, I think, and especially in our sport. What do guys do when they get together? They sit on the tailgate, they talk about their hunt last night, or they talk about a dog that they had, or whatever. And it's a storytelling sport, I think. And I will say, I'll go on record as saying I enjoy your writing very, very much. I think you do an excellent job, and I think our sport is all the better for your efforts. And I just want to publicly applaud you for that, because you've always been one of my favorite writers. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are writing, about our sport. They're making little posts on Facebook and all, but anyway, that's enough of our mutual admiration society for this evening. But it's all very it's all very true from my standpoint, and I appreciate your remarks as well.
Well, thank you,
Amy.
because that's really what I contribute to the sport. I'm not a competitor. I'm not out there coon hunting. Both of my children, my son had the opportunity to hunt in autumn oaks. My daughter is probably the best handler I've ever seen in my life outside of her father. Clay's a little more high strung like me. I think it gets to him a little more, but Rose is very mellow, and she's very talented. So my contribution is not necessarily being a big winner. It's not going out there and competing against my peers. I really don't have much to prove. I just like knowing. I've never known life without a dog. I've never known life without coon hunters. I've never known life without squirrel hunters. And I don't want to know life without it.
Yeah, very well put. I think that would be a great place to stop, but I'm not through yet. I want to ask you about your involvement with the kids, with the PKC youth program and all. You seem to be came out of left field. Boom, you're right in the middle of it. You're right out there, and I know that's a big job. I absolutely loved the finals with the kids when I was at PKC. One of the things I enjoyed doing most was when we get all the kids after their dinner the first day there, and we'd line them all up, and they'd come in, and we'd call their name and announce their winnings. And we had George Strait on the PA system saying, "Dad, this must be the best day of my life," or whatever. And it was just a rush for me. But I wasn't actually working with the kids, but you were. How did all that come about?
And once again, Steve, I never asked for the job. Never once. So I guess I had started writing for Prohound. When I started with Cooner, Larry and Rita Meek still owned PKC, and they asked if I would do some articles for Prohound on the winners. Because I actually started with Prohound before I started with Cooner. And so they said, hey, Jason Miller has this idea for the coon hunting series, Little World Coon Hunting Series, where we have like a different program to get kids more involved. The goal was to try to get more kids involved. So it was me in a room with Jason proposing his idea. Roger Dale was there, Larry Meeks, Reggie Ramsey, Mr. Kelly with K-Light. There were all kinds of people in this room, and everybody had great ideas. And you got to remember, I don't PKC hunt. I know the rules now because of my children and drilling the blue book into their head, and but like at that time I was just a writer. That's all I am. So everybody's saying what they're going to give to this program to help this program succeed. And I said, well, I'll write an article each month. It's really about the only thing I can promise you, but I can promise you every month we will have a youth article in the magazine. And I'd like to see it in Cooner, and for a while it was in Full Price for kids who don't get Prohound. What's the point of writing an article if it's for the kids that are already involved in the sport? In that, with that registry. So, we tried this, and it's not around today, and I'm the only person left standing still writing an article each month. So I'm just involved with the kids trying to get, information for this article, helping out where they asked me to help out, helping with, auctions, being at the breeder showcase. And I like kids. Obviously I'm in education, and I know what coon hunting meant to me as a child. So I want to see that fostered in others. And we're at the PKC World, and I'm sitting at the table, and Roger Dale introduces me as the national director. And I'm like, huh? What? Me? Like, I mean, people who are listening to this podcast are like, Amy, Amy, sometimes I say bad words, Steve. Sometimes I say things that people probably shouldn't say. Well, they probably should say them, but we normally don't. I'm that person. I'm always like, hey, let's just shoot the elephant in the room and talk about it. I'm all
Yeah.
about that. So that is how it all started. I just fell into it and I love it. And so then I started doing a youth feature. Once again, this goes back to me being in the magazine as a child and knowing the difference that seeing yourself in the magazine can make. The thing is kids have all kinds of sports that they can play. They have video games. They have all kinds of options. But if somebody takes them coon hunting or somebody recognizes them, we plant a seed. And in high school, they may not coon hunt. They might be playing varsity football and they can't make the big hunts in the fall, or they're playing varsity basketball, or they might go off to college and they get out of it, or they might get married and have, a baby. But that seed's planted and we
Mm-hmm.
never know when the seed's going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Their son or their daughter might turn to be 5 and they might be like, I'd like to take them out on a coon hunt, or I'd like to take them on a squirrel hunt. We never know when it's going to grow, but if we don't plant the seed, there's no chance of it. It's kind of like the Bible verse, of the seed falling on fallow ground, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't know when a seed will take off, but you got to try. You
Yeah.
have to. So
Well,
that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly did a great job in that role and have done that. And as evidenced by the pictures, and pictures, they say, are worth 1,000 words. And when you look at the smiles on those kids' faces and all, and when they come up and they've been successful, and I was honored, as you know, a few years ago to get to speak to the kids, and of course, and our dear departed Jarvis Humphers, I think, spoke the following year, and it is the future, but it is also the now in my way of thinking. If we don't take care of these kids right now, there is no future for us. So I'm going to be one of those old guys that's going to be sitting back rocking and looking and saying, I know the people that made this possible, and I'm going to be proud that I knew those folks. And all right.
So I do want to back up for a
Okay.
second. I did step down as national director last year. Nothing that I do has changed outside of Chris Freiberger, who ironically I met when he was a teenager and we were competing with our cur dogs. He is now our national director,
Right.
and Chris knows coon hunting and he knows people, and I'm a person who can recognize if I could hold it to the status it was, but I couldn't make it grow. Not at this stage in my life with my job and my limited knowledge of, putting on a hunt format and knowing where to go for resources and guides and judges, and Chris brings all that to the table. So everybody's like, "Oh, you're stepping down." I said, "I'm not going anywhere." Everybody thought because Rose was out of it or I became a grandma, I was done, but I still am doing the part I agreed to do all along. And you know what? We've seen the program grow with new ideas and new blood, and I'm very proud to be working hand in hand with Chris Freiberger with the
Yeah.
PKC Youth
Yeah.
Program.
I hope to have Chris on this podcast because he's got a very important job. I don't know Chris personally, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with him. And I hear he's a great guy and very, very capable. And so, yeah, well, that's great. Now, I've got to ask you about something, a tradition that started when you were on the road working the events and all, and that's the famous purple purse. How did this go? Tell our listeners what that was and how it got started and all that entails.
All right. So Grand American. Terry's there in the corner booth and he takes me. And I don't know, Steve, anybody in this sport is competitive. We're all competitive by nature. Not one of us would be involved in this if we weren't. So I'm going to show Terry Walker I can sell magazine subscriptions. I don't get a commission. It makes no difference whatsoever if I would write up 25 for him or 125. It makes no difference. Doesn't change anything in the world. But they've got this booth, and they got the belts where you get your names on them. I got a clay and rose belt, and they got these purses, and they're heart shaped, and they got fringe on them and silver conches, and I'm looking, and I'm me. I'm weird. I'll be the first to admit it. And I tell Terry, I see this purple purse, and I think it's the tackiest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It's not something, I'm the Michael Kors girl and the Coach purse, but I see this purple suede purse. And I say, Terry Walker, if I sell, how many subscriptions do I have to sell for you to get that purple purse? And he looks at me like I've got 3 eyes. And he's like, I don't know, 125. I'm like, 125? Okay. So the whole weekend, Steve, I'm like, Terry, I'm at 88. Terry, I just got another 2. We're at 90. I'm so close to this purple purse. Terry, I'm pretty sure, is convinced I really want this purple purse. Like, he thinks I like it. I really like it. And I'm playing. And I get to 122 subscriptions on Saturday at 4:45. People are drawn out. The crowd's over. Everybody's ready to go home. They bought dogs. They're done. And I'm like, Terry, I can't believe I failed. I was like 3 away from the purple purse. And he's like, oh, just go buy it. So I buy this tacky purple purse, and I'm clutching this thing like it's the most wonderful item in the entire universe. And I'm going to wear it I'm going to buy matching purple suede shoes and gloves to go with this purse. And then I don't know how, because again, Steve, I'm weird. Everybody in the coon hunting world will tell you, Amy Thomas is weird. You don't know what you're going to get with me. It's going to be fun, but it could be a little weird. I get a silver metallic paint marker, and I decide I'm going to have people start autographing it. And that purple purse has the UKC owner, the redheaded guy,
Wayne Kavanaugh.
Wayne Kavanaugh. I get Del Morgan to sign it for UKC. I get Larry Meeks to sign it with PKC. It has all 3 owners on it. So I start carrying this purse and this pin, and people start asking me about signing my purple purse because I write about it. It's part of my story, my event story. And so people start asking, and I have a purple purse, a turquoise purse, a light brown purse, and a darker brown purse. So I have only one that's not filled. Now, I quit carrying it because I felt like maybe that was overkill. But if this podcast renews the love for signing the purse, this chick will take a purse and a pen to every event I go to. So you let me know if your listeners want to sign the purse.
There you have it. So
there's the purse.
So if you want the purple purse to come back to a major event near you, you need to go on social media to Gone to the Dogs Podcast Facebook page and just simply put in the comment section, bring back the purse. And we will make sure that information goes right straight to Amy. So you heard it first right here, folks.
I always said that if the right auction for the right cause came up, I would auction off a purse if people were interested. I don't know if I could part with the purple purse, but I have some pretty big names and signatures on some of the other ones. So
yeah,
I always said if it went for a good cause. But.
Well, I know that maybe somehow we can work this in together. If you can find a cause that you really want to do, we'll promote it here on this podcast, and maybe we can sweeten the pot a little bit. I just heard from the folks at W Hunting Supply, which I should mention to pay the bills. They're the folks that sponsor this podcast and make it possible for me to be on every week. Buddy Woodbury and all the staff at DU Hunting Supply. Our listeners should know that if you need anything in the realm of sporting dog equipment, and especially the electronics and the service that you'll need to back that up, you need to contact W Supply. So there, we've paid the bills for the week. And but anyway, I was told by Jason Doobie out there, who oversees the podcast program on this platform, that I'm going to have some stickers available. So I'm going to have to figure out a good way to distribute those stickers. So maybe we can get together, Amy, and work up something on that. But I'll leave that up to you. You figure out some way, if you want to make a contribution and to a charity of your choice, maybe we can make it happen.
Hey, I'm all for it, and if it's weird, I'm right there with you. That's what makes my stories interesting, whether they're my own or somebody else's.
Well, this podcast is coming on the heels of one that just aired last week, and that's with Daniel Felker and his Coon Hunting Confidentials page, our podcast where he delves into the mysterious, the paranormal, the cryptids, and all that stuff as it is associated with coon hunting, if you can imagine that. So maybe a kooky contest for a purse might fit right into that. Okay, you alluded just a few minutes ago to the fact that you are now, as you said, a grandma. Tell us about this granddaughter. Everybody wants to know, I promise you.
In the beginning, you always wonder what grandparents are talking about. And I'm not a baby person. Like, I do a good job with babies, but I like when they can respond. And Ellie is, 10 months old. She'll be 11 months old May 11th. And she can smile now. And they have a red-bone coonhound that they got from Weiss Kennels up in Missouri. And she loves Roxy. This dog is so good with Ellie. She may never make a coon dog because she's a house dog but she's beautiful, and her and Ellie are already tight. And seeing that kind of takes me back to the black and tan, at the Christmas tree, when I was a baby. And what's funny is, you kind of talked about the paranormal. I guess it was right before Tori told us she was pregnant. I woke up, and I'm not the most church-going person, but I believe in God. And I believe in the Holy Spirit, and I believe that if you're open to messages and directions, God's going to take you there. You might want to fight it. I didn't think I'd be remarried to Billy Thomas, but here I am. But God gives you direction if you pay attention, or signs.
I agree.
And I usually find for myself they're first thing in the morning. It's usually where my inspiration from stories comes, things like that, when I'm not quite fully awake, and then it's in my brain. But I walk out my hallway, with my hair all over my head, my makeup down on my face. I thought I got it all off the night before, but I was wrong. And I see this blonde-haired, curly child in overalls running down my hallway. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, that was weird. I couldn't tell. I thought it was a boy because it was overalls, and I told Clay, I said, I think I saw my grandbaby. And a couple weeks later, Tori was sitting at the table, and I said, are you okay? You look different. And she was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. So, I didn't say anything. Well, the next day they came back and they said that she was pregnant. And Ellie has blonde hair with these crazy curls like Clay had. And, when things are meant to be, they're meant to be. And I'm looking forward. Tori's got a very good family, and this baby, it's nice to see in the world a baby that is so loved from every side.
Absolutely.
So they're kind of the city, the family, and they're fun and enjoyable, and we're the country grandparents on the farm. So, I'm really looking forward to taking my grandbaby out with the squirrel dogs and riding on the side by side and catching crawfish and frog gigging and doing all those things I did growing up that made me who I am today. And you can take me somewhere fancy, and I promise, Steve, I can use the right fork in the right order, and I know how to behave myself, even though a lot of times I don't. But there's a side of me that you can't put me in a creek that I'm not looking down for a crawfish to catch, or I'm wanting a frog gig and things like that. So, I'm looking forward to raising a granddaughter who can go to plays and fancy places and wear dresses, but also run down my hallway in a pair of overalls so we can go outside and get muddy.
Awesome. I have a granddaughter in Chicago that I don't get to see very often. My Christopher has one child, a little girl. Her name is Chloe Jolene. I think they named her kind of a country sounding name just for me. Maybe I like to think that. I love her name. She's absolutely adorable. And of course, she's, the love of my life. Grandchildren are so incredibly special. And I didn't know that. Ella, of course, we each had marriages before, and she had 4 daughters, and so she has now altogether, I think there's 7 grandchildren, because her one daughter has a blended family now, where she had 2 children and he had 2. So anyway, and we love them all. They're just great, and can't get enough of them. But that little girl, her mother was born in Greece, and she's got that kind of wavy hair and all that stuff. And she just got me tightly wrapped around her finger, and she calls me Grandpa Steve. And we FaceTime all the time, and we're going to see each other a whole lot more. I'm going to be knocking on their door every few days if we don't. But anyway, they're great, and I so enjoy your posts that you'd make on Facebook with your family, and you're really great about posting those family pics. And don't ever think that they're not enjoyed, because I can tell you one guy that enjoys them, that's for sure.
And we're not a perfect family. But we're a good family. My dad came over for Easter, and growing up, our house was a little chaotic,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad didn't get to experience a relationship like my brother and I have with our spouses. And so it was just different. They did the best from where they came from, but they both came in with some baggage, and that's just part of life. You get baggage along the way. But he came to Easter and, with me and my family, and we had dinner and everything was great. And then he went and he saw my brother on the way home, and, I called him next day, and he's like, it's so different, Amy. It's just, everybody gets along, and it's just, it's calm, and it's, but, we're not a perfect family. We have our moments and we have things, and, I've had family strife, with my dad and my brother. But in the end, if you're willing to work on things, you can bring it back around, and I say that with therapy all the time. People will be like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, hey, if I could remarry my ex-husband and we weren't kind to each other at the end of the marriage, if you can forgive and you can say, we may be different. We may not agree. We may agree to disagree.
Exactly.
Whether we're coon hunting against somebody, or we're in our family, or it's our relationship or our children, as long as you communicate and you're respectful to each person, you don't have to agree. So it was really neat at Easter to have 4 generations and have my dad be able to experience with both of his children what just a regular everyday holiday should be like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the activities leading up to my mother's funeral, I was able to spend a few days with my son, Christopher. And, being an only child and going through his parents being divorced and all, it was a rocky time for him. And it was a rocky time for my relationship with him. And over time, we began to build blocks, like you say, baby steps, one at a time. And now, when we get together, it's just a joyous time. I mean, I got to spend 3 days here in Florida. He had a conference in Orlando and said, Dad, I want to come down for about 3 days. And, and of course I jumped on that like a chicken on a June bug, and we got to go around and see some of the places and that I enjoyed, and some of the places he remembered as a kid coming to Florida, because his mother was from Florida. And also just family is so very, very important, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Those imperfections, I think, just make them. My dad was from a big family in Tennessee, and would go there, and they would argue over anything. I mean, someone would say, the sky sure is blue today, and they said, no, it's the cloudiest day I've ever seen. But they loved each other tremendously. They just like to argue. But anyway, well, Amy, it's been absolutely delightful to have you on this podcast. I know our listeners will agree. I sure would like to have you to come back sometime. Maybe you can bring Rose and Clay with you, and Billy, and we can get everybody on here, and we can ask them, is there a side to Amy that we're not seeing here? Maybe they can tell us something.
Well, what I'm going to tell you, Steve, is what you see is what you get. Good, bad, ugly, pretty. I'm just me, and it's all I can be is me.
Well,
like I said,
I can say that everybody loves that. And that's been part of your charm all along. So with that, Amy, is there anything that we should have talked about or we said we were going to talk about and we didn't, or something that you would just like to say before we wrap this thing up?
I would like to say something before we wrap this thing up because,
Yeah.
I've played different roles. People have seen me at the hunts. People have seen me at the different stages in my life. But the one thing that I can tell you, Steve, is I really appreciate you having me on here because I haven't been able to travel as much the last few years with my children playing varsity sports. I stepped down from traveling because I didn't want to miss out on my children's lives. And then COVID hit. Rose graduated in 2019, and I thought I'd be able to go to more events, and then the world kind of fell apart. And I miss my friends. You were talking about Johnny Brinkley, and I still have the walnut bowl. We're rehabbing the house, and that is not one of the things that is getting, changed up. I miss the adventures. I miss interacting, having dinner with you, or seeing people that even though I may have seen them only once a year at the Grand American, they're my friends. And they will always be my friends. And we may not talk every day, but I really want the people who are listening to know that I appreciate them. I appreciate the friendships. I never understood why people brought me gifts. I was like, I'm no different than you. Like people, people would bring me chocolates and things like that. And I never understood because to me, it's as I told you earlier, it's my honor to interact with them versus thinking I'm special. I'm just a storyteller telling people stories and hopefully making somebody smile. And, I'm not perfect. I bit a kid one time in the youth program because he wouldn't get his finger out of my face. And Rose still tells that story to this day because if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Ask Billy. That's how we ended up divorced. But, the fact is I'm authentic, and
Yes,
I've
you
met a
are.
lot of wonderful, wonderful people, and it's a blessing. And I just want your listeners to know that I appreciate the honor of coming on this podcast. I've only listened to one podcast my whole life. I'm not good with auditory. I'm a visual person.
Hmm.
And so this might be my second one I listen to, or I may not listen to it and be like, I'm afraid I'm going to sound like an idiot, but it still gives me a chance to outreach to the people who matter to me. And I'm getting ready. I'm working on being a case manager for a foster child, like a special advocate. I won't have a foster child, but I'll be with them till they're placed. And they said that what builds resiliency is community, connection, accomplishments, feeling like you've accomplished something. And all of those things are what make our coon hunting world what it is. We have community, we have connection,
Yes.
we feel
Yes.
accomplishments. And I think that's why no matter how this world turns out, and I'm a little disgusted with it, as I'm sure you are,
Sure.
with some of the things I see, I know that those people who have their children and have their dogs in the woods, and whether they're rabbit hunting, squirrel hunting, fox hunting, coyote hunting, duck hunt, even if bird hunting, we have a community and a connection, and we will be resilient no matter what. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to touch base with the people that I've missed at the Grand American and the Autumn Oaks the last couple years. And I want to thank you for thinking highly enough of me to have me on here.
Oh, well, that's probably the easiest choice I ever made. I've been podcasting now for about 3 years, and all of a sudden, I'm like, duh, you haven't had Amy on yet. Let's call her up. So thank you so much for coming, Amy. It's been delightful, as I knew it would be. It always is. I know the last time you and I had dinner together, Rose was with us, I believe. It was at Orangeburg, and it's always great to see you at the events, and I sure hope you'll be out there at some more real soon. And gee, it was a great visit. Tell the family hello for me. Tell everybody that I look forward to seeing them again, and keep those pictures coming on Facebook.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, if somebody asks you, hey, where's Steve Fielder these days? You tell them he's gone to the dogs. Well, it's that time in our podcast once again to visit with our friend Fred Moran, the Redbone Man from Pennsylvania. Fred, how you doing today?
Well, could do better. I lost my tracker. I don't know if I lost it in the woods, misplaced it,
or what? This is the second one I've gone through. I'm bad at not keeping track of things. But I called an old friend and he says, well, he can't let you go without one. He sent me one. And I got it today and it works fine. So I'm back in the business again.
I'll be darned. Well, Fred, those things have got. What kind do you use? Is it a Garmin?
Yeah,
Is it the
230.
Okay.
My kids got one of the alphas.
Yeah.
I like mine better than I like his, so I use mine all the time.
Got you.
And he wouldn't care if I used his every day of the week, 'cause the only thing he does with it is he's got a couple beagles come rabbit season. And other than that, and he had a good bobcat dog. We used it a lot in the winter when the snow was deep and that, and we put him to sleep this winter. He served his purpose. He was a good dog. I bought him in Tennessee off an old guy down there, and he swore by him. My buddy did too. We bought him and never regretted it. He was a nice dog. He'd tree a coon along with a bobcat, but he liked the bobcat, and there was something for us to do when the snow got too deep and you couldn't coon hunt.
Yeah, I tell you what. Well, when you're how many 80s is it now? 80. What your age?
85.
85. Well, when you're 85, you got to have a lot of stuff to keep you busy.
I keep busy.
Well, you got me by 10 years, Fred, and I get tired sometimes, and I admire you for sure, your energy.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm running out of it slowly. It's hard to keep up with the younger ones.
Yeah,
and especially
that's for sure.
if I take a grandson who's 14. What's the matter, old man? You can't keep up? Oh, that gets me. I can't let him beat me.
Well,
we've been hunting. I got 2 guys coming tonight. We're gonna see if we can run a sick one that don't run too far.
Yeah.
Got a young dog coming on real good. I like him. I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to fix on him, but all in all, I think if nothing happens to him like another car, you'll be hearing about him.
Well, that's
great. He's got a mouth that'll hurt your ears, and he's a tree dog. My buddy Herman Gehring, he used to hunt with me all the time. He moved and I moved. Now he's back in my area, and he don't have a dog anymore. He got a squirrel dog, but he goes with me quite a bit. And I seen him in a corner in the woods a couple of nights ago. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm counting. I said, counting what, money? No, I was counting how many barks the dog gives. And I said, well, how many? He says, 84 in a minute. I said, well, that's pretty good. And so
you bet. How's this dog bred, Fred?
He's out of a female I used to own. I called her Brown Sugar. She got Lyme disease on me. And I think every vet in the country gives that for an excuse when they get one that's a little down now. Oh, he got Lyme disease. I get tired of hearing that. I says to the vet, I said, are you sure it's Lyme disease? He says, that's what the test come up. Well, I got a little discussion. Marlon Martin and I have done some business through the years. He's up in Michigan, an Amishman. Real nice guy, and he'll tell you the truth. I told him about the dog. He says, how much you want for it? I give Martin a little bit of a deal. And he called me up after he had her about a month. He says, because to me, she just wasn't the same dog after going through the treatment for Lyme disease.
Well, I hear that's the way it works. I've heard that before.
Don't get me wrong. She ain't out of gas or anything like that completely, but she ain't the dog she used to be. I mean, I used to wax these guys. Now maybe I get waxed once in a while. But anyhow, so I give him a good deal. And he called me up one day about a month after he had her. He says, I'd have liked to have seen that female when she didn't have that Lyme disease. If she's that good now, I'd like to have seen her then. I said, I'm glad you like her. I said, she was a good dog. I says, Scott Perky, a good friend of mine up here, had a good red dog. He was a Grand Night champion. I watched him bad one night with but Perky don't hold nothing against you. He just giggles and goes on with the flow. And he hunted with her after she contacted that Lyme disease. He said, Fred, I can't believe that's the same dog. She sure has changed. And she did. Now, I never hunted with her more than 2 times or 3 after she got that Lyme disease, and I could tell the difference right away. But Marlon seemed to think there was nothing wrong with her. I'm glad he saw it that way. But this pup I got is out of his dog that he calls Badger that he raised. And the female is the sugar dog, which goes back to the woody dog of Doug Moore's.
Right.
And I like him. He got a mouth that'll hurt your ears. He is a tree dog. So,
well, does he have those eyes when he trees? That seems to have been my fault. My problem here the last year.
He's been accurate so far. I hope he don't get in that habit. I treated coon 2 or 3 nights ago, and I know for a fact, he didn't tell me his name, but I know it's the same coon I treat in the wintertime. I treated about 5 trees over from where I treated in the wintertime, and he's an extremely big coon. I know he goes anywhere from 25 to 27 pounds. He's that big.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd like to crack him out of there and show him to all my buddies, but he'll be there. He'll be there when the big coon contest comes. And
there you go.
2 days later, I treat another one that I've treated before. This time he was laying on a big old hawk nest about 4 trees from where I treated him the previous time. I know it's the same coon.
Yeah, he's hanging right in that same area.
He's staying right in that area, and I hope he does come November. But so I got 2 big ones to look forward to.
There you go.
The coon hunting's been good.
That's good. Well, springtime has come to Pennsylvania, hasn't it?
Yeah. You could tell that not from crops or anything, from the greenbriers. You know, if you hunt in them, you'll remember.
Oh yeah.
Strangers that you're not used to hunting and come up here, they say you can have that hunting in Pennsylvania. I don't want nothing to do with that. But you get used to it, and if you wear a good pair of some kind of covering like Carhartts or chaps or something, you won't feel them too bad. I had a girl hunt with me. I got 3 girls. Everybody thinks I'm a lover or something.
Yeah, you're a ladies' man. I can tell that.
I got 3 different girls to hunt with me. One has dogs, Patty Busy, and she'll go every night if you call her. But I want to hunt my own dogs usually, so I call the other 2 more. So one, I just call her Blonde Bomber, but her right name is Terry. Well, she was out with me a couple nights ago. And I says to her, the dogs split tree, but they weren't far apart, maybe 30 yards. I said, you go get the young dog. I said, now watch him. He can pull, jerk him on his hind end. Don't let him pull you all over the place. And he hears the other dog down below treeing, and he decides he wants to go down there and look. He pulls her along, and he's pulling her on her belly. She hit her head on a tree, got a knot on her head, then her nose started bleeding. It was so comical, but she didn't think so. And I finally got her down on the road, and she's sniffling there and everything. I said, when it happens like that, leave the leash go. Then you won't be pulled to her. I didn't think of that. So we had an early hunt. I took her home. She she was sniffling and everything else. But
well, they're going to get you for domestic abuse.
I know, I know. But I bet if I call her tonight, she's ready to go. She likes to hunt.
Your story, Fred, your story reminds me of when I was a kid. Our coon club used to get coons for restocking. In fact, a lot of them came from up your way in Meadville, Pennsylvania.
I know just who. The guy's name was Hunter.
Paul Hunter. That's correct. Yeah. And so when we'd take the coons out to turn them loose back in the early days, some of these dogs in the southern part of West Virginia had never seen a coon. And so the habit was the guys who'd usually, if they had a young dog or something, they'd just take it along just to let it see that coon in the cage and watch it go when they turned it loose. And my dad had a couple of dogs there, and I don't remember which ones they were, but I must have been about 8, 10 years old maybe. And he said, and he was releasing the coon. He said, now you hold these dogs and don't you let them go. I don't want them catching that coon. You just hold them right here. And I had them on a double, what we called a double couple, where we'd take an O-ring and about 4 S-hooks and make like a double couple for them, you know. And I'm holding these dogs. Well, when that coon came out of that cage and took off, boy, those dogs gave a lunge. And just like your friend there, they pulled me right on my belly. And here I went down through the woods. I looked like one of those guys on a Western, you know, when he's trying to stop a team of horses and they're dragging
I know
him.
what you mean.
And I said, man, I can't let these dogs go, you know. And I was eating it, man. I was eating dirt and stumps and everything else. And I finally I got them in one hand on the leash and hooked my arm around a sapling and got them stopped. But in my case there, I would have got my jeans warmed up probably if I'd let those dogs go.
You know, speaking of them coons, there used to be, well, I know you heard of this guy. He's been dead, though, for a long time. James Bruce had a red dog named
Bruce's
Pokey
Big
Bill.
John. You remember Bruce's Big John?
I know his dog, Pokey Bill.
Yeah.
I had a female. Well, they didn't have no coon down there. I used to hunt not far from them. I stayed with an old couple. A buddy up here had a big farm, and we'd go down there, and he'd just do nothing but sit on the porch. I hunted with everybody down there. Well, anyhow, they didn't have no coon, though. And it was hard to get a strike. But they heard of Paul Hunter. And anyhow, they got in touch with him and started buying coon off him. He'd bring him a whole truckload of coon. And each club member of their club would get maybe 10, and they could turn them loose anywhere they wanted, where they hunted. And I asked Paul, did you ever ear tag him or anything to see, or not Paul, I asked James Bruce. I said, did you ever ear tag him in that to see where they'd go in that? He said, Fred, in 20-some years of doing that, I got one coon of all the ones I turned loose, and I got it at a farmer friend's mine 28 miles away. That's a long way.
It is. You know,
in my opinion, I've trapped coon and restocked them. In my opinion, when you catch a coon, you mark it, and 9 chances out of 10, it'll be back where you turned it loose at or got it from within a month's time. Well, I've done it a lot of times now. They don't all do it, but majority of them do. And I put an ear tag in their ear and stuff like that. But they just have a tendency to go back where they come from.
Well, Fred, we're going to have to stop this session right there, and I will put a little punctuation on that. We bought stocked coons from all over the country there and brought them into southern West Virginia, and the best ones that we got were those Pennsylvania coons that we got from Paul Hunter. But down through the years, we got them from Florida. Those coons didn't do well at all.
No, they won't.
Yeah, and we got some from out in West Texas. and brought them in, and they did fairly well. But you're exactly right about that. Well, listen, let's wrap this one up, and then I'll call you back here in a few days, the next time we're ready to record a podcast. I want to hear the story about that coon hunt you're going to have tonight.
Okay. We'll
All
give
right.
it a try. All right, take care.
Okay, you going to tell JJ good night?
JJ loves that. He likes to hear that. He'll call me up. That's on tonight. That's on.
Okay, folks. Well, that's the great Fred Moran, the Redbone Man from Pennsylvania, and he'll be back next episode. And that's all for the Gone to the Dogs podcast for tonight.
Hey, JJ, I'm still thinking of you.